Right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologise for the cut out earlier because it's just my SD card got full. But anyway, I'm gonna start again with the giant cuttlefish. Now, giant cuttlefish are in the cephalopod family, which are the same group as octopus and squid, and they are basically the living equivalent to an alien spaceship or an underwater chameleon, because like chameleons they can change their colour to describe their mood, but also, like this big male here is doing, they can also create these almost disco hypnotic lights to attract a mate or even to hypnotise their prey. And quite often, males will clash with each other for best breeding rights, as you can see here. And of course, there's actually in a sheltered bay in South Australia for about 3 months every year, cuttlefish gather in their millions at that bay to breed. And of course, cuttlefish also have probably the most advanced vision of all sea creatures, because they can actually see polarised light, so even if it's night time or in the dark depths of the sea, they can see their prey using polarised light, which is absolutely amazing. But also, like a chameleon as well as an octopus, they can not only change their colour, but also change their body shape to blend in with their background, or to make them look like either seaweed or even rocks, and they can get as close as they can to prey, which is usually a fish or even a crab, and then, using those two large tentacles, bang, they wing them forward and slap onto prey like fish or even a crab, and then if they've got a crab, they can just smash its armoured shell apart, and then it's dinner time. Now, of course, cuttlefish are of no danger to us as human beings. In fact, they are, to me, some of the most fascinating creatures in the world, and I would love to see a cuttlefish one day. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if I'd ever get the chance, but even so, they are very hypnotic as well as very, very beautiful creatures. In fact, here is the bay that the cuttlefish come to each year for 3 months of every year to breed. And now, the next animal I'm going to show you is the 5th most toxic snake in the world. It is the tiger snake. Now, the tiger snake, well, it gets its name from the colouring down its back, like yellow and black stripes, a lot like the stripes of a tiger, and that give it its name. And this is probably the 5th most toxic snake on the planet. And it's in the same family as the cobras, called elapids, so it has the ability to spread its ribs into a hood to make itself seem larger, but this little snake has drop for drop venom far more potent than any of the cobras, far more toxic than a king cobra, than a black mamba, or even a boomslang. And that's all mainly down to its food of choice, which is frogs. And of course, if you're a snake and these super fast amphibians are on the menu, you want to be able to kill them quickly so they don't hop away and leave you hungry. And that's why the tiger snake's venom is so potent. Just one bite and it's all over. And it's one thing to stop a frog dead in its tracks, but of course there's enough venom in a bite from a tiger snake to kill a handful of people. In fact, try and imagine if you've been unlucky enough to accidentally step on a tiger snake and it bites you. The bite itself wouldn't even feel that bad, but inside your body it's a completely different story, because there are toxins in the venom that dissolve and eat your muscles. Your nerves will start firing off. You feel a tingling in your hands and feet. You can't keep your eyes open, and you feel your throat starting to close. But also, the blood in your veins is thickening into sticky clumps. The muscles around your heart and lungs are seizing up, and you're barely able to breathe, and your nervous system shuts down completely, and then you stop breathing. Of course, if you don't get the help in form of anti-venom, this could all be over within an hour. However, tiger snakes quite often have a reputation for charging people, but actually, tiger snakes, if people get close to them, all they really want to do is escape from danger. In fact, their first instinct is to flee to get away. Of course, if they feel like they can't get away, they will spread their ribs into a hood and make mock strikes to try and drive you away. But the only time they're likely to bite you is if you accidentally step on one. But of course, if you were a frog, a toad, or a small mammal, this would be your living nightmare. Of course, this is where tiger snakes are found. They prefer South Australia because there's a lot more boggy wetland and marshland, because that's where there's a bigger concentration of frogs and toads, which are the main things these snakes feed on. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is one of the fastest fish in the sea. It is the blue-finned tuna. Now, bluefin tuna are some of the fastest fish in the sea. In fact, they've actually been clocked going at over 40 miles per hour, so they can outpace a sports car like a Porsche or a Lamborghini. They're sort of like the sub-aqua version of Top Gear. But also, tuna can grow to be as big as I am. In fact, bluefin tuna can grow as big as I am. In fact, the biggest tuna ever recorded was heavier than a horse. But also, they have very, very thick, bony skulls, but also the ability to warm up their blood, which can help them go at top speed. But tuna don't eat people like me. They actually feed on smaller fish like sardines. And of course, if I was a sardine, I wouldn't be able to finish this sentence before I'd become lunch. And of course, what they do is the tuna will gather their prey up into a tight ball known as a bait ball, and then hit the power button, and they will zoom in and out of the shoal to pick off any fish. And so if a sardine loses his buddies for more than a second, zoom, he's munched. But unfortunately, this spectacle is now becoming increasingly rare because over the last few decades, tuna have become endangered due to overfishing. In fact, when I was a little kid, I'd never imagined that these massive fish that came in small tins that my mum used to buy for my sandwiches were actually some of the most special in the animal kingdom, but also one of the most prized for food. And now, thanks to overfishing, they're becoming increasingly rare. But fishermen, in their attempts to make sure they don't go completely extinct, have actually been farming tuna in big pens like that. But also, another way to protect tuna is to buy tuna tins that are pole and line caught, because pole and line caught tuna means that they don't take out massive shoals of them like with nets, but also when they're caught in nets, they tend to secrete a kind of oil as a defense mechanism, which makes them taste a bit blech. But of course, I've never seen tuna before, well, not tuna in the wild. I mean, I would like to, but of course, knowing that one of these guys could grow as big and heavy as me is actually friggin' incredible. And of course, here is their distribution across Australia. Now, I'm going to finish off with the animals of Australia that are no longer around. The first one is the giant lizards. I can't remember the name of these. I think it's Megalaria or something like that. But anyway, these were the ancient ancestors of Komodo dragons, which aren't alive today. And these guys could grow to be up to 7 meters long and weigh and be heavier than 2 fully grown men. And of course, they evolved in Australia, where they developed venom to bring down megafauna, giant mammals like this, the Diprotodon, which is a prehistoric giant wallaby, and of course, well, the giant wombat, and of course, the giant wallaby or kangaroos. And then I'm not entirely sure what this one is, but it was sort of like a giant duck. But of course, those four giant beasts went extinct in Australia when the Aboriginal people arrived, because they more than likely hunted them for food, but also out of fear. And unfortunately, these giant animals are not around anymore. But this animal only went extinct in Australia about 90 years ago. This was the thylacine, or Tasmanian wolf. Now, this was a marsupial, which is, as I mentioned before, a mammal that grows its babies in a pouch on the mother's belly. And it was the largest carnivorous marsupial and one of the largest land predators in Australia. And of course, they coexisted with the Aboriginal people for centuries, in fact thousands of years, until just over 200 years ago, European settlers arrived in Australia with livestock, guns, dogs, cats, rats, foxes, badgers, weasels, pigs, and all sorts of other invasive species, and they decimated much of Australia's unique wildlife, and the Tasmanian wolf was systematically hunted to extinction by humans. In fact, this was actually a picture of the last known animal, which died in a zoo in Tasmania in 1936, which spelt the end of this species and a new low in our relationship with the natural world. Right, well, that has been my remastering of this presentation on the 16 animals of Australia. I hope you all liked it, and once again I apologise for getting cut off during the talk about the giant cuttlefish. I have corrected that mistake, and of course to see that, do check it out. Do check out the rest of my remastered PowerPoints so far, and if you want to see any more of these, because there are going to be, the rest of my PowerPoints are going to be remastered, because I have had a lot of you asking me to do that. Do drop a comment down below, as well as share these videos with anyone who you know, like me, is passionate about the natural world and wants to do their part. Okay, thank you. Bye now.